Welcome back to Overtime here on WOTM. We will stay with the NCAA tournament, but Marco, let's switch gears and talk about the Gonzaga side of things. I'll ask you a question that I think might be a little bit difficult to answer, but how do you think this season will be remembered for most college basketball fans and sports fans in general? Will this be Baylor's first win ever? Or do you think this will be, hey, Gonzaga once again knocked on the door and couldn't get it done? Will this be remembered for the loss or for the win, do you think?
Well, I think because of COVID, it gets a little bit of a pass
Right.
maybe for Gonzaga. As far as Baylor, people probably won't remember them like they would in a regular year, and it's pretty unfair.
Yeah.
And they did extraordinary things. For teams to put up with all the things that they had to do this year,
Right.
you know, all the rules, all the thing, you know, if someone got sick or if they tested positive, that they had to quarantine, just how separated they were from their friends and family, all that stuff. That was tough for coaches to do, and that was tough for players to do. So I think that itself made this year a little bit different because when you consider all that. So maybe the fact that Gonzaga had a perfect season didn't get as much attention as it would have in a year where there was nothing else to talk about.
Right.
And Baylor's effort during the tournament, you know, if you remember going into the tournament, Baylor was probably one of the teams, because of the way they performed in the Big 12 tournament, that they were like, yeah, maybe this team's susceptible.
Right.
And they just, you know, came out and they dominated from the start. Really answered a lot of questions about their ability to win, or the state of Texas to win, which we see now. It's only the second time that happened. So, but I think if you're Gonzaga, this was, you know, maybe there were some people that would have looked at it and said, well, it was a year where we didn't have all of this going on.
Right.
But still, it wouldn't have mattered. If you're Gonzaga, you want to win. They were set up to win, and they didn't. But it's a difficult thing. When you're undefeated that long, you can find out, you know, all it takes is one game to lose, and right there, after surviving what they survived against UCLA, and you think, oh, okay, now this is it, just close as it's going to come.
Right.
There you go.
Looked like the basketball gods had this team kind of pegged to be the special team, and then Baylor had other plans and made history of their own. Gonzaga is led by head coach Mark Few, and Mark, you've done a great job kind of breaking down some of the things that surround his career. He's known as an easygoing coach. He's known as a coach that doesn't necessarily wear his losses. He wears, of course, in the moment, but
all coaches do.
But you know, in a week from now, 2 weeks from now, he'll be fly fishing. I heard one of the best trout fishers in the entire state of Washington. He's not one that actually does that. We'll take a listen to Coach Few after the game yesterday, and then we'll have a little bit of a breakdown from our Mark about Coach Mark Few. Here's Coach Few after the game.
I mean, it's obviously a feeling these guys had never had to address and deal with, but I think the nature of it tonight probably made it. You know, I mean, it's not easy, but again, you just as a coach try to give them as much perspective as you can, and as is usually the case with everything, time will lend them the best perspective.
Perspective is a word he used 2 times there, and I think it's kind of important, even as we break down his career. Obviously, he's a Hall of Famer just right now. But the thing is that everybody's going to focus on the zero. The national championships won, but he has now gone to 2 national championship games. And as you kind of see him, and as you take a while to digest, you know, what he's been able to do in the world of college basketball and changing this program altogether, what are some of your thoughts on Few?
Yeah, I think perspective is a key word, because that's what I was going to use. He's able to give his players perspective. He's able to give himself perspective in life. Okay, sometimes you don't win all the time. Sometimes it takes a while before you learn how to win.
Right.
And at the times when things seems like you have everything going for you and everything looks like you're going to win and you don't, that just makes you a little bit stronger.
Right.
Their history is filled with teams. You think of Virginia after how bad they felt when they lost in 2018 to a 16 seed when that's never been done before.
Right.
They come back and win next year, so you never know. Okay, and you know, in this year that were, you know, looked like Gonzaga had everything set up for them. They didn't win, but you know, I remember Duke a couple times being in that situation and coming back winning back-to-back NCAA tournaments in '91 and '92. So you know, after failing, you know, in '86, '88, '89, '90, so. You know, it's going to happen. There are things that you need to do in order to get to that level.
Right.
And he's there.
Yes.
The rest is just luck.
Exactly. So he coaches at Gonzaga in the WCC, so he's racked up a lot of wins. He's also been to been to the NCAA tournament a lot of times. And you will take a look at some coaches here that took a while for them. It's not always lightning in a bottle, but these are some Hall of Famers on this list, and some people that you immediately affiliate with certain schools, whether it's Duke or Syracuse or North Carolina or Kentucky or Arizona, and he's right there, right among them. And so I know that he doesn't have any titles yet, and there's a lot of coaches that took a while before they got there. I thought it was a really interesting thing that you broke down as far as coaches in their career before they actually hoist that championship have to go through a lot of hardships.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a few very similar to Jim Boeheim. Jim Boeheim is known as one of the best coaches ever, in college basketball history. Krzyzewski is a guy that has dominated, in his time at Duke. Duke was really nothing before Krzyzewski got there, turned him into a winner. Roy Williams, he retired, the other day, and you look at his legacy. Roy Williams was a guy for a long time that was known as he can't win the big one.
That's right.
Same thing with John Calipari. A guy can't win the big one, can recruit great, can get a team to the Final Four, but can't win the big one. Dean Smith, another guy, probably one of the greatest coaches ever. He's right up there with John Wooden. I remember one time having an argument with somebody, and they didn't believe me that Dean Smith had only won 2 national championships, and Wooden had won 10.
Yeah.
But a lot of that was because Dean Smith got there and would lose early on when it was a little easier to get to the Final Four. He had been to 6 Final Fours and lost in the semifinals 3 times, lost in a national championship game 3 times before he won a title with Jordan in '82.
That's right.
Lute Olson, another great coach that started at Iowa, went to Arizona. So there was a lot of coaches on here that are great coaches that are in the Hall of Fame, and it took them a while to learn how to have that consistent success in the NCAA tournament. Boeheim wound up winning with Carmelo Anthony. Krzyzewski's won 4 or 5. Roy Williams has won a couple. Calipari's won. So these guys, once they learn how to win, they're able to take that and stay competitive, but also get over that hump that a lot of them, they said the same things about a lot of these guys.
Exactly, and now all these guys are either in or going to the Hall of Fame. So Coach Few going into season number 22 still has high expectations, and even the Vegas gods think that they have a shot to win it again next year. Meanwhile, staying with Mark Few, one of the things I found really impressive is his overall winning percentage. Minimum of the last 10 years, you take a look at some of the names on this list, like Rupp, like Wooden. This is pretty elite company here for Coach Few.
Look, I didn't expect to see this. When I was looking up, I wonder where his winning percentage sits. Sam Burton and Claire B., that was really before, time existed, okay? So you really can't look at them and say, okay. But Adolph Rupp is a legend. You know about them. John Wooden, obviously, is a legend. John Kress, a guy who was one of my mentors at College of Charleston, a guy I worked a lot of summers for, St. John's graduate. He won 80% of his games at College of Charleston. He won a lot of games, too, before they came into Division I.
Right.
And once they got into Division I, they did very well in the Southern Conference. So these are really great coaches, and Few is 8-3-4, winning 83% of your regular season games at NCAA tournament because he combines both. He's won 30 games at least, I think, 7 or 8 times.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that he's done. A great success, great program, but also a guy, like we said, he's not going to just kill himself for achieving. He is able to put things in perspective. He's able to keep these kids and understand that life is about more than just succeeding at basketball, which is why these kids go on to have successful careers and lives, because of what he represents and the type of person he is.
Exactly, and he's actually getting the recruiting going in a good way too, where he's now getting guys that stick around for 4 years and NBA guys. Jalen Suggs will be a guy that's top 3 in the NBA draft coming up in the next couple of months. Meanwhile, the last thing on Coach Few here, now his record against number 1 seeds is starting to have a little bit of a pattern here. He's now 0-8. Baylor last night being the last one. You see his record against other number 1 seeds. I'll ask you a pointed question. Do you think this is a product of the fact that his conference doesn't necessarily prepare him to face teams, not just him, but his teams, to play against number 1 seeds, because the only times they do play against that caliber of team is in the big dance?
Right. As we'll see earlier, when I was interviewing somebody else about this, they mentioned the West Coast Conference isn't that bad.
That's right.
San Francisco's not that bad. St. Mary's is not that bad. Pepperdine's not that bad. So it's getting better. Look, you see a UNLV when they won with Larry Johnson and Stacey Augmon and those guys. They were in the Big West back then. and they won despite the fact that they played in a weak conference.
Right.
Sometimes you can play in a weak conference and be so good it doesn't matter. They play a very strong non-conference schedule every year. You saw them, they had played, but the teams they played this year, that's a normal for them.
Right.
They try to schedule as many preseason tournament stuff to take advantage of that. So I don't buy that. Sometimes the ball just doesn't bounce right. And you have teams that and coaches that you would look at and haven't had a glimmer of the success that Mark's Few has, that are able to beat number 1 seeds and then can't beat a 10 or 11 seed.
Exactly.
So I don't really put much into this. It's just an interesting stat, and it's something that probably will gain more and more attention until he does it.
Exactly, and that'll also be a talking point for a long time until they hoist that national championship. Mark talked about it earlier, gave a little preview. Stick around towards the end of our show. We'll have a very, very special guest, somebody that Mark has known for a very, very long time, a name that you might know if you keep up with sports and watch ESPN for a long time. You will know this name, and we'll talk a lot more about the NCAA tournament coming up then. Also, Mark, will stay in college basketball. Nate Oates making some noise today, signing a 4-star prospect. He's out of Canada, but he goes to the IMG Academy over in the Ohio area. His name is Charles Badaku. He is a huge, huge player. 6'11", plays at the IMG Academy, out of Florida. He plays at the one at Florida, but he's a native of Ontario, Canada. 6'11", he's a 4-star prospect. Alabama's now recruiting class jumps up to number 3 in the nation. They surpassed Duke, so number 1 is Michigan, number 2 is Florida State, number 3 is Alabama. How much is Alabama's hype and the season that they've had this past year kind of leaning towards what we might expect from Nate Oates, these great recruiting classes now led off here by Badaku?
I think it's going to be a key in the seasons to come. The other thing is Primo, a guy that had a great year, and him getting hurt probably cost him a little bit. He's from Canada.
That's right. They actually went to the same high school.
Yeah, so you can dip into the up there in the big cold, and get some of those Canadians to come down and score some points for you.
Exactly. 24/7 Sports, once again, ranking him as one of the best players, number 26 overall in the country, and one of the top players at his position. 6'11" Charles Badaku going to Alabama, making Alabama now with the 3rd-rated recruiting class for the class of 2022. So Nate Oates continuing to make noise even after the NCAA tournament is over. We'll stick around here on Overtime. We'll flip gears over to baseball. The Atlanta Braves off to a very rocky start. We'll put it in perspective coming up next year on our program.